Okay, so we're asked to find GI, and GI is a line segment. We're looking for GI without anything over the top means the length of line segment GI. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. The first way is to just count. So from G to I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I get 6. The other way is to use the formula, and so remember it was the coordinate of the first, so that coordinate that goes with G is -5, always a minus, and then coordinate of I, and the coordinate that goes with I is 1. So -5 minus 1 is -6, and that's in absolute values, and the absolute value of -6 is 6. And for HJ, let me get a different color. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, that's also 6. And if I use the formula, the coordinate for H was -1, always a minus, and the coordinate for J was 5. -1 minus 5 is -6, and the absolute value of that is 6. So I get 6. Then for number 3, it says, are segments GI and HD congruent? And then explain. So congruent means same size and same shape, so they're both line segments and they both equal 6, so they are the same size and the same shape. So we're going to say yes, because they are the same size, or the same shape, sorry, and they are both 6 are both 6 units long. Okay? So that's problems 1 through 3. Now number 4, I have this segment KT, and I'm going to highlight that. So KT is this segment right here. Okay? And I'm also given the segment TP. And we're given the whole, and then we also know the whole segment, which is KP. And I'll do that in green. So KP would be from here to here. Now I know how big each piece is. I know that, sorry, I need a pen. I know that KT is 3x plus 9, and TP is 2x minus 7, and then the whole thing, again, is 42. So to solve this, we're going to use, remember, what's called the segment addition postulate. And the segment addition postulate basically says that the part plus part equals whole. Part plus part equals whole. So one part is this yellow part, and the name of that part is KT. The other part is this blue part, and that's called TP. And the whole thing is the green part, and that's called KP. Now we can plug in what we know. So we know that KT is 3x plus 9. TP is 2x minus 7. And the whole thing has to equal KP, which is 42. Now this is a fence. When I'm working with the same side of the fence, I do exactly what it says. So it says 3x plus 2x, and that gives me 5x. And then 9 plus a -7 gives me 2, and that equals 42. Now to solve this, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and I get 5x equals 40. And I'm going to shoot that up there where I have a little more space. 5x equals 40, and I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and I get x is 8. And it was just asking for the value of x. I found it. It's 8. So that's my answer. X is 8. I could check it. 3 times 8 is 24, and 24 plus 9 would be 33. So if I checked it, this part would be 33. And 2 times 8 is 16, and 16 minus 7 is 9. And 33 plus 9 is 42, so it checks. Okay, so number 5. So number 5, we're given that T is the midpoint of SU. This should say SU. So T is the midpoint of SU. So this right here is the midpoint. So remember, that means these two pieces are equal. So let me highlight the pieces. Here's a piece, ST, and here's another piece, TU. And those two pieces are equal because T is the midpoint. So if I were to cut, if this was a candy bar and I were to cut it at T, the blue piece and the yellow piece would be equal. So I can say the two pieces are equal. So I'm going to say part equals part, or piece equals piece. So I know that the blue part is 5x plus 9, and the yellow part is 8x minus 36. And the name of the blue part is ST, and the name of the yellow part is TU, and they are equal. So I can say their measurements, 5x plus 9, has to equal the measure of 8x minus 36. And again, here's our fence. We're crossing the fence, so I have to subtract 5x from both sides. And I get 9 equals 3x minus 36. Then I can add 36. And I get 3x equals 45. And we divide both sides by 3. And I get x is 15. Now it wanted x, so I found x. X is 15. That's good. But it also asks me to find the length of TU. So TU is the yellow piece, and that's 8x minus 36. But remember, we just found x, and x was 15. So I can replace the x with 15 to find TU. So 8 times 15, well, 8 times 10 is 80, and 8 times 5 is 40, and 80 plus 40 is 120. So this is 120 minus 36. Now 120 minus 20 is 100, and then we have 16 left to subtract, so 100 minus 16 is 84. So I believe that TU is 84. Now I can check that by plugging in 15 over here. So 5 times 15 is 75, and 75 plus 9 is 85 minus 1 is 84. Yeah, 84. So 84 is correct for TU, because ST is also 84, and the two pieces have to be equal. Okay. So for number 6, we're going to use the distance formula to find the length of the segment, and we're actually going to do it using two methods. So the first method we're going to use is the distance formula, and remember the distance formula is the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. And the midpoint, and the Pythagorean theorem, I know you all were taught a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but in my class I teach leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So I'm going to go with that formula for the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so first we have to plot the point. So A is the point negative 8, 4. So negative 8, 4 is right there. That's point A. And B is a point 6, negative 5. So right there's B. And I'm going to draw the line connecting the two. It was not such a great line, but we're going to pretend it's straight. Now I'm going to use the distance formula to find the distance. So first I need to label, this is x from point 1, so x sub 1, and this is y from point 1, so y sub 1, x from point 2, and y from point 2. Now plugging in, I say x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is a negative 8 squared, plus y2, which is negative 5, minus y1, which is 4, quantity squared. Remember, it's always a minus, so there's always that minus in here. Now, that minus in this case gives me a plus. So here I get the distance is 6 plus 8, which is 14. So 14 squared plus negative 9 squared. And 14 squared is 196, got the square root, and 9 squared is 81. And I believe 196 plus 81 is 277. And then I have to use my calculator to find the square root of 277. And so I'm getting my calculator and I'm squaring it. Yep, I got 16.6. So the distance is 16.6. So that's 16.6 units. Now that's one way. The second way is to use the Pythagorean theorem. So here we go. So to do the Pythagorean theorem, I have to draw a right triangle from A to B. So I'm going to go down until I get on the level with B. And then let me change color. I'm going to go over until I get to B. And let me grab the pen. Now I'm going to count. This is this yellow segment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is 9 units. And this green segment is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 units. And this is the right angle, and the side across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. And it needs to be a letter, so we're going to call it x. So remember, leg squared plus leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. So the legs are 9 and 14, and they equal the hypotenuse, which is x squared. So we got 81 plus 196. And I want you to notice something. This 9, we got a 9 here. And this is 14, and notice we got a 14 right here too. See that? So remember, the distance formula was found by using the Pythagorean theorem with a generic set of points x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so I get 81 plus 196 equals x squared. So I get x squared equals 277, and then I'm going to take the square root, and I get x is 16.6. So whichever method I use, I get 16.6 units. Okay. Number 5, AB has these endpoints, -2, 4, and 7, 9. So I'm going to go ahead and plot those points, -2, -4. And that's A. And B is 7, 9. So 7, 9. And I'm going to draw the line between those 2 points. We'll see how I do. Not bad. Okay, so I'm looking for the midpoint. Now the midpoint is going to be somewhere here in the middle, right? It has to be exactly in the middle. Actually, I think I missed the midpoint. Let's try it again. Somewhere in here, somewhere, it has to be the midpoint, right? Because it has to be exactly in the middle. So the midpoint formula, and I'll write it down for you again, the midpoint formula is equal to, it's an ordered pair, so it's x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. And again, it's parentheses and separated by a comma. So another color, get me red. This is x1, and this is y1, x2, and y2. Sorry, my husband's yelling at the pet. Okay, our bunnies. Okay, so the midpoint is x1 plus x2, so x1 is negative 2, plus x2, which is 7, divided by 2, and then y1, which is negative 4, plus y2, which is 9, divided by 2. And negative 2 plus 7 is 5, so I get 5 over 2, negative 4 plus 9, which is also 5 over 2. And 5 over 2 is already reduced, so I can leave the answer as 5 over 2, or I can divide, so 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, 2.5, or I can make it mixed number, so 2.5, 2.5. So to plot this, to make sure that it's in the right spot roughly, I'm going to go over 2.5, so here's 2, so a half more, and then up 2.5, 1, 2.5 more would put me right about here. So right there is my midpoint M, and to me that looks like that is in the middle, and it's certainly within the range that we targeted it. Okay? Okay, number 8, I have an endpoint, and I need to find the other endpoint. Okay, so I have the endpoint and a midpoint, and I need to find the other endpoint. So negative 3, negative 6 is the endpoint that I'm given. We'll call that J. And M is the midpoint, and that was 1, 2. We're going to call that M. So there's two ways of getting M. Okay, so one way is to use the slope, the rise over the run. So to get from J to M, we have to rise and we have to run. So let's count how far we rise and how far we run. So using this green, I'm going to rise from J to M. I'm going to rise that many. And that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like 8, right? So I went up 8. And then I'm going to go over it looks like 4. So I went right 4. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up 8. Let me get another color. I'm going to go up 8. So up 8. That's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I up 8 and over 4, and right there's my point. So right here's my other point. That's L. And the address for L is from the origin. I went over 5 and up 10. So it's a point 5, 10. So that's one method. The other method is to use this formula. So the formula is, remember, you write end, mid, and then end. So the end point that we know was J, and that was negative 3, negative 6. The midpoint that they gave us was M, and that was 1, 2. So by using only addition or subtraction, how do I get from negative 3 to 1? So you ask yourself, what do I add or subtract from negative 3 to get 1? And the answer is I added 4. So down here, to find the endpoint, I have to do the same thing. I have to take 1 and add 4 to it. Well, what is 1 plus 4? 5. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'll do it in a different color though. Okay, from -6 to 2, I had to actually add 8 to get from -6 to 2. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to add 8. And what's 2 plus 8? It's 10. So the endpoint is 5, 10. Okay? Now the following problems you have to solve on your own. And once you've solved on your own, you have to either check with your teacher, you have to show your work with those solved problems, either to your teacher, to an instructor in the math lab, or an instructor in the help lab, or if you have a support teacher, to your support teacher. And then you have to get a form from your teacher that the teacher who supervised you solving these problems will sign off on, and then you're allowed to take the retake. Okay, so to make it really easy on the people, these are the problems you have to do. So these are problems 1 through 3. You should draw the picture and write out the problems and then solve them. Okay, you can pause this while you write. So you go ahead and pause it and then start it up again. Then there's the second slide. So this is problem number 4. Again, you're going to want to write down the problem and draw the picture. And you're going to write it out and solve it. Okay, and then number 5, again, draw the picture, solve it, and finally 6 and 7. Oh, I give you 2 Pythagorean theorem. That's good. Solve them both. Okay, and then it's good practice. And then 8, you have an endpoint, 2 endpoints, so you have to find a midpoint. And number 9 is an endpoint and a midpoint. Okay, so make sure you work out these problems, show your work, and then you should give them to your teacher or one of the teachers that we talked about to double check that you did it. Okay? Good luck on your retake.